adapted soccer, floor hockey, softball, and bowling. There's not a lot of programs for kids with disabilities after high school.
Come with all different varieties of disabilities, and everybody gets involved in the game at an equal level. The majority of our people are people that have played in high school, that the sports that they played there just aren't available outside of school.
It would be emptier. It would be less feeling of camaraderie, less feeling of sisterhood, brotherhood, sense of togetherness. We can come together and just have fun and be silly doing what we like doing. We like playing sports, just like anybody does.
My name is Robin Young. I'm the publisher of Orthopedics This Week, and I'm supporting a nonprofit 501c3 organization that puts together and promotes adaptive sports for anyone and everyone with a disability. The name of the organization is We Love to Play, and it was started 26 years ago in Minnesota. I'm doing whatever I can to help them raise funds to create the first National Center for Adaptive Sports and Recreation. They've received a lot of support for this project, but need to raise $100,000 to fully launch it. The first and only National Center for Adaptive Sports and Recreation in the United States. 20% of the U.S. population, more than 60 million people, have a disability. Where do they go to participate in competitive sports and recreation? More than 9,000 sports complexes have been built for able-bodied people, but none for disabled people. We're talking about a true adapted sports and recreation complex, a place for wounded warriors, trauma patients, people with congenital disabilities, anyone with a disability who loves sports, would like to come for a Saturday night bowling with their family. We're talking about Paralympics, wheelchair hockey, basketball, softball. These are for athletes from high school. It could be college athletes, amateur adult athletes, recreational athletes, all of whom have one type of disability or another. Really, nothing like this exists today. The time has clearly come to build from the ground up a true adapted sports and recreational complex. This complex would offer baseball, softball, football, basketball, track and field, soccer, lacrosse, as well as adapted yoga, adapted weight training, dance, even martial arts. It would be a center for tournament play, whether it's in the Twin Cities area or regionally, or as the first and only National Center for Adapted Sports, would attract national tournaments as well. It would be a true first of its kind. We're talking about building from the ground up an adaptive national center which has the latest technologies for adapted sports, like embedded LED lights in the gymnasium floors that can instantly change to create the markings for football or basketball or softball and so forth. Wheelchair charging stations, all the counters at wheelchair height, running tracks for people who are blind, softball fields that can accommodate wheelchairs, wheelchair golf, automatic doors throughout, and enough spectator space for hundreds, maybe even more than hundreds, of wheelchairs, and a whole lot more beyond that. This has been a long time in coming, and frankly the time is now. Here's a short history of adapted sports. Minnesota is the birthplace of adaptive sports. In 1969, Jim Christie, who recently passed away, said to his physical education teacher, why isn't there a competitive sports alternative for people like me in a wheelchair? His PE teacher, Ed Prohofsky, agreed that that was something that needed to be corrected, and he started the ball rolling. 1 year later, after that initial conversation, Jim recruited 2 other students, Tony Laban and Paul Pranghofer, really to keep the pressure on. From 1971 to 1973, Jim, Bob Anderson, and Tony wrote the first rules for adapted floor hockey, and that PE teacher, Ed Prohofsky, recruited 6 other high schools to finally, in 1974, create the very first league with 6 teams: Marshall University High School, St. Paul, Humboldt, Osseo, Anoka, and 2 independent schools. The Minnesota Association for Adaptive Athletics was formed. In 1979, the rules were written for adaptive soccer. In 1984, adapted softball was added. And then later, in the 1990s, the MAAA became part of the Minnesota High School League, the first time that has happened in the United States. While that took care of high school students with disabilities, what about adults? By now, Jim, Tony, and Paul had graduated from college, and together with Scott Young, they formed a nonprofit athletic organization called We Love to Play to organize and promote competitive sports for adults with disabilities. That was 26 years ago. Built already in the United States, and the largest one in Blaine, Minnesota, cost about $40 million to build initially, but returns $89 million annually in economic benefit. The model for the We Love to Play sports complex is a platform of usage contracts with area school districts and colleges, intramural adult membership fees, and of course tournament use. We would hope to host more than 50 tournaments annually as, again, the first and the only National Center for Adapted Sports and Recreation. Now, we've been fortunate enough to attract the interest of 3 cities in the Twin Cities area. They have a strong interest in having We Love to Play, the National Sports Center, located in their communities. As a community development project, funding is available through revenue bonding, taxpayer funding, and private donations. The Blaine Center, for example, was funded with taxpayer funds and private donations. To turn strong interest into a funded community development project, we need an economic impact statement. And one firm, CSL, who is the national leader in doing sports complex economic impact studies, they've agreed to do the analytic report to create an economic impact report, which would be the first of its kind since it's covering adapted sports complexes. These reports are not cheap. They are detailed. They go into market trends. They go into site analysis, governance, cost benefit, everything. They're very detailed. And this kind of report costs about $100,000 to put together. It takes about 4 months, but it is comprehensive, and frankly, it's utterly required for a project of this size and scope. So, will you contribute to helping us build the first adapted sports complex in the United States? Anything you can do will help. On behalf of everyone at We Love to Play, thank you very much.